Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really profound text that completely, radically redefines what it means to heal, to thrive, and quite honestly, just to be. Look, if you've ever felt that crushing, exhausting pressure to finally have it all figured out, to cross some imaginary finish line where all your struggles just magically vanish, then this analysis is going to be incredibly liberating for you. We're going to dive deep into a piece of writing that basically dismantles everything we've ever been taught about personal growth.
We're actually skipping the usual agenda today because this explainer is a deeply personal journey, and it starts with this absolute anchor of a quote. Just listen to these words. I am not writing this from a place of arrival. Right out of the gate, the author shatters this illusion of the finish line. I mean, think about how much of the self-help world promises an arrival, this magical day where you wake up perfectly healed, completely whole, totally unbothered. While the author admits right here that this is a total myth. They're writing from a place of becoming. And as we're going to see, embracing that concept of becoming, it changes absolutely everything. All right, let's get into section 1, the myth of thriving, breaking down the outside version.
So, what does thriving actually look like? Seriously, it's a question we all ask ourselves, isn't it? We look around, we scroll through our feeds, and we constantly measure our own lives against these impossible, entirely external standards. We kind of trick ourselves into thinking thriving means flawless execution, having boundless energy, and just never having a bad day. But the source text we're exploring today completely rejects that entire premise. The contrast is pretty wild when you think about it. On one hand, you have the outside version. It's heavily curated, it's intentional, it's that everybody thinks I have it together version of thriving that we project. It feels safe, sure, but keeping up that facade is so deeply exhausting. Then, on the other hand, you have the unfiltered version. The text argues that real thriving isn't polished at all. It's complicated, it's messy, it's real. And the author makes this very deliberate choice to toss out the curated version and focus entirely on what thriving actually feels like from the inside out. Moving right along to section 2. Unfiltered reality of healing, breathing, boundaries, and messy growth.
The source describes this process so perfectly. Thriving looks like 3 steps forward and 1 step back. And here's the absolute most crucial part of that concept. It's about having the grace to be okay with that ratio without completely collapsing. I mean, how often do we take that 1 step back and instantly feel like we've totally failed? The text tells us that the backward step isn't a failure at all. It's literally a built-in feature of the thriving process. It's having the grace to hold the genuinely good days and the really hard days at the exact same time.
Unfiltered thriving shows up in these wonderfully ordinary ways. It's holding those good and hard days together. It's knowing exactly who you are, but still leaving the door open to discover new parts of yourself. And I absolutely love this next point. It's having opinions, actually saying them out loud, and then not spending the next 3 days agonizing over how they landed. Imagine the freedom in that. It's making decisions based on what you actually want, not just what feels safe to others. And ultimately, it's going to bed in a house that is entirely yours. Quiet, imperfect, but finally, genuinely safe.
And all of those little moments culminate in this incredibly profound statement from the source: it feels like breathing. The author explains that after years of bracing, living in that low-level state of high alert, constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, learning to just breathe again is monumental. It is, as the text beautifully puts it, the most extraordinary, ordinary thing in the world. When you finally stop bracing for impact, you can just inhale.
And you can literally feel how that newly found freedom manifests physically. Think about the shift from a polite, performative laugh, the one we all use to keep the peace and check if we're being appropriate, to a genuine belly laugh. That real laugh bubbles up from somewhere deep and completely unapologetic. It's the literal sound of making decisions based on what you actually want, rather than just managing everybody else's discomfort.
Okay, on to section 3. The power of becoming. Why we are never done. We really need to redefine this word becoming, because the source material makes it abundantly clear that this ongoing process of growing and looking honestly at ourselves is the whole point. We're not supposed to be finished. The author writes that, yeah, there are still hard days. There are still moments when old wounds surface and old fears whisper in your ear. But the radical shift here is that they are no longer ashamed of it. They're not trying to be done with the becoming, because the becoming is the actual destination.
Listen, if you only take one single thing away from this entire explainer, let it be this. The text argues that the person who is always growing, reaching, and willing to look honestly at themselves to ask how they can do better, that person is not broken. Being unfinished does not mean you're damaged. It means you are alive. And the author declares, with zero apology, that being alive is entirely enough. In fact, it's extraordinary.
Which brings us to Section 4, Validating Your Survival, a letter to the survivor.
Let's just slow down for a second and let this really sink in. The text shifts gears here into this highly intimate, direct letter to you, the reader. The author acknowledges that getting to this point required remembering hard things and actually feeling emotions that you probably got really good at suppressing. And they offer this powerful foundational validation. What you have survived is real. It wasn't just in your head. It wasn't not that bad. It was real.
And they go even further to validate the sheer exhaustion you might be feeling. The exhaustion of trying to do it all, of holding yourself together with just pure willpower, of being everything to everyone else around you. That heavy, invisible burden, the author sees it and explicitly states that the weight you have carried is real. You aren't imagining the fatigue. It's earned. It is so absolutely essential to internalize this. When we start setting boundaries, or when we finally say out loud that we want a life that actually feels like our own, this little voice often creeps in telling us we're being selfish or overdramatic. Well, the text shuts that down immediately. You are not dramatic. You are not weak, and you are certainly not asking for too much simply because you want a life that belongs to you. The author paints this incredible picture of profound resilience. They recognize the immense strength it takes to love deeply, to be hurt significantly by that love or by life circumstances, and to somehow just keep going anyway. They even specifically note the monumental task of raising a child right in the thick of navigating your own messy, complicated becoming. The text firmly reminds us, I don't care how ordinary it feels from the inside, doing all of this is far from ordinary. It's straight up heroic.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 5. Your story isn't finished, looking toward unwritten chapters. The message here is completely definitive. Whether you are currently just barely surviving, whether you're finally starting to thrive, or whether you are a very complicated, messy mix of both right this second, you are not finished. Your story is not over.
And it's not just that your story keeps going, it's that it actually gets better. The author shares this not as some empty feel-good platitude, but from their own lived experience. They talk about this tearful, grateful surprise when they realized that they once believed their best years were firmly behind them, but they discovered they were completely wrong. The best chapters of your story are literally still being written right now.
The text closes with a fierce, unmistakable mandate. Whatever brought you to this realization brought you here for a reason. And the instructions moving forward are clear. Keep going, keep healing, keep leaning hard into the messy process of becoming, and above all else, keep choosing yourself with the exact same fierce, unwavering love that you've spent your entire life giving away to everyone else. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought as we wrap up our time together today. If arrival is a total myth, and if you are fully empowered to just keep growing, healing, and choosing yourself, what will the next chapter of your becoming look like? You've got the pen. Keep writing. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.